in 2020, I decided I was going to make a massive change to my life. I retired early, sold, dumped and gave away practically all of my possessions and set off with my dogs on the biggest adventure of my life. This video explains why I did it, how I did it, how I financed my new life. Before I get into the video, I think it's time I said out loud, let you guys know that the past few years have been the best years of my life, the happiest years of my life. I'm so glad that I perked up the courage to go ahead and follow my dreams. And I want to thank all my viewers, subscribers, commenters for watching and joining in with our journey. Thanks guys. It is me! Hi folks, I'm Steve, welcome to the channel. Now, I get asked all the time, how did I afford to stop working and just start travelling without a regular job? So in this video, at last, I'm going to explain how I did it and how I've managed to make a massive change in my mindset that I never thought I was capable of and which allowed me to do what I've done. If that makes sense. I was a spendthrift all my life, prioritising experiences, doing adventurous things over saving and being cautious. And while it gave me some amazing adventures, I've done it so much in my life, travel wise, it also meant constant stress with debt, etc. Which I never thought in a million years I could change. I thought that's the way I'm going to be the rest of my life. So in this video I'm going to talk about a few principles that dawned on me during lockdown that allowed me to change as a person, change my way of thinking, surprisingly easy, far easier than I ever thought it would be. For example, some of my theories. Get rid of all the stuff you don't need it. Lose all the debt. You don't need it. Stop being attached to physical stuff. You don't need it. And stop buying crap. You definitely don't need it. Also, stop worrying about what people think. Stop worrying about what other people have or have not. And, very importantly, I figured out how living a healthier life would help give me financial freedom. And that's a big statement, but as you're going to see, for me, it's true. And then I'm going to go on and give you an insight into how I do finance my lifestyle, my budget lifestyle. But I'm going to start off by explaining a little bit about how I lived my life, what led up to me changing, and the steps I took to make it happen. You know, all my adult life I've said to friends and family and work colleagues that I would eventually like to retire early and live somewhere with a nice climate and somewhere or some way that allows me a reasonably stress-free lifestyle. The dream. Now, as I said earlier, I've always been a spender. Like, I'm dynamite with money. I enjoy it, and I've done a lot with it, but I'm a spender. Was a spender. Well, I'm still a spender, but I spend it better now than I ever did. If I had a motto for most of my life, it would have been something like, just do it and worry about the cost later. That's so much me. So I don't know how I ever expected that I would ever fulfill my dream, because I was so daft with money. But I just felt I would make it happen. That sounds silly, I know it doesn't make much sense, but here I am, I'm doing it. You know, I'm a firm believer in positive thinking, and the older I've got, the more I've felt that I'm a firm believer in, or the more I've become a firm believer in positive thinking. I've increasingly believed that as my life went on, and I 100% believe now, if you want something in life, want something to happen in life, the more determined you are, the more likely it is that that's going to happen. You will make it happen. I firmly believe that. And it took me a long time to get to this sort of feeling of knowing. Right? So, the thing that led me to start building towards my dream life was a life-changing event. I've mentioned it before. The life-changing event led me over a very short period of time to realise and understand once and for all that life really is short. You know, for as far as we know, we only have one go at this life. And the only thing that stops us living the life that we dream of, the life that we really want, is our conditioning, our life experiences, our fear of making mistakes, our worry of what other people will think, and our lack of understanding that so many of the things that hold us back in fulfilling our potential in life just don't matter. We worry about stuff we just shouldn't be worrying about, but we've no way to know any different. It took me many years to come to that realisation, and I have come to it properly. I think most people have had these thoughts. You hear people talking, we've all expressed those feelings, but few of us ever act on them. They're a pipe dream. They're something that we would love to travel or whatever, but we just don't see ourselves doing it, and we go on with our normal lives. So in 2020, what happened to me was I had a serious accident while in Thailand that almost killed me, and it caused something inside me to change for the better. It's like I had, as Samuel L. Jackson says in Pulp Fiction, I had a moment of clarity. And you know, people say quite often in my comments section that I come across as a personable guy and as an easygoing guy, but that's not always how I was. I was an easygoing and friendly person, but I had a tough side. I was very driven and always kept my feelings to myself, bottled up. And that's not a good thing. That's never a good thing. I now know that. I always thought you just are what you are and you can't really change. But fortunately for me, I was wrong. I've learned that change is actually quite easy once you decide that you really want to change. That's the trick. And talk about it, and we'll do this, and I want to do that, I want to do the other. But until you decide that you really want, then nothing will change. And my accident set me off on this path that I'm on. Now, I'm not going to go into the accident in a lot of detail. I have said it all before. And by the way, if you'd like to know more about my accident, what happened, there's a video. I'll leave a link in the description that'll take you straight to that particular video which explains my accident in Thailand and a few other bits and pieces. But basically, a few years ago, just before lockdown, I was in Thailand and I had a fall at a swimming pool which caused me to burst my appendix and my gallbladder. And they didn't know about the gallbladder until I was having my operation for my appendix, and then it was a big panic because it was a bigger problem than the appendix, and they knocked me out and I had to have a big operation. They put a tap into my spine, all sorts of stuff. So I was in a pretty bad way, and after the doctor told me I could have died, but I had a fantastic medical care and I got through it. And you know, in these circumstances, when bad things happen to you, I ended up I had a problem with exit, and I ended up not in a private hospital. I ended up in inland. It was boiling hot. There was no air conditioning. So when you're in that situation and you don't really know what's wrong with you, and you're excruciating pain and you're boiling hot, and the place was very dull and stuff, it's really worrying. It's really frightening, especially being on your own. I have lots of friends, but I had nobody with me at the time that this happened, so nobody knew what had happened to me. So I was there on my own in this hospital in the middle of nowhere. But rather than the whole experience having a negative effect on me, it had completely the opposite, a really surprising effect, and it let me know a lot about myself, how I reacted to what happened. I left the Thai hospital after nearly a week, still in extreme pain, hadn't eaten for a week, but feeling as happy as I've ever felt in my life. That's the truth. Just absolute joy. And I had been feeling this after my operation. The operation took place a couple of days after I was there, and with all the pain that I was in, I just felt so good. I mean, I was uncomfortable and stuff, but so lucky to be alive. There was like a joy and when I got out of the hospital, it was like a joy and an excitement. And you know, back then I didn't do YouTube or anything, and that's not that long ago, 2020. But when I got out of the hospital and I got back to my hotel, and I went out that evening walking very slowly, and I was sitting in a favourite bar of mine. I wasn't drinking or anything, but I was sitting in a favourite bar of mine, just thinking about the whole experience, and I ended up deciding to record myself because I wanted to be reminded. I've still got the recording, and I wanted to be reminded of how I felt then and how this should change my life. Lucky to be alive, you're only young once, all those things, that's always going about in my head. You need to start doing what you want in life. You need to be happier in life than you are. You need to stop taking life so seriously. And that is how it affected me, still to this day. So I flew home the very next day, and for all Boris's faults, he made my recovery so much easier, because he put all of us self-employed people on the income support scheme. He told the mortgage companies they couldn't charge us our mortgage payments every month, and in Northern Ireland we also got an additional payment if you were self-employed. So I would have come home in pain and agony, self-employed. I don't think I could have worked, and it just would have been a nightmare. And all of a sudden, so I'm one of the only people that lockdown, actually, for as bad as it was and the reason it was there, it worked out. It done me a lot of favours in my head and in my financial situation, and it allowed me to do something I'd never done in my life, which is save. I started to save. And whenever you're not able to go out and spend and whatever, people always say to you who do save, it'll surprise you the way it goes up quickly. And I could never see that, but whenever I was off for lockdown, I seen it. All of a sudden, fairly substantial amounts of money were in my bank account, which I'd never experienced before. Big stuff, you know, big stuff for an individual person to be deciding to make all these massive changes in their lives. I've never been married, I've no kids, so for me, making big changes is obviously a lot easier than families, etc. But I do believe that families and couples and everybody can make big changes in their life. But for me, I have no one else to be answerable to. So I was able to do this. But it's alright saying you can do it. It's another thing actually carrying out big changes in your life. I realised very quickly I didn't want to go back to hard working life. I work 6 days a week, workaholic, and with not having a family and whatever responsibilities, I think that's why I was always foolish with money. You just, you know, you're just wasting it. You're working like a maniac, but then you're just wasting your money. So I started to think about how I could actually make the changes in my life happen, do the things that I've always wanted to do. How could I ever make that happen? Could I afford to make that happen? And that led me to gradually start changing my own relationship with money. I read tons of books and watched lots of videos about the subject. And I gradually came to the realisation that I could actually start living the life that I've always dreamt of if I went about it in the right way. But to do it, I knew I would have to dramatically change my whole approach to life, my whole approach to money, and my whole approach to life. And was I able to do that? So that was the thought process. That was the, you know, all the events and my feelings, and over a period of time this all took place, I suppose, in the first 3 or 4 months from the accident. And then I started to realise other things. I started to think about things in an unusual way that I'd never thought before. And one of the first things that dawned on me was that I had so much stuff. and a lot of stuff which I never used, and a lot of stuff that I was paying finance for. And by the way, again, I have another video where I talk about this subject of stuff and letting go. And it's my favourite video I've ever made. It was about 18 months ago when I was living in Guatemala. So again, I'll put a link down below, but it's a very, very good video to make you think along this topic, but a bit more detail than I'm talking about now. So I realised that all that stuff cost money. So I started to think about getting rid of most of it, dumping the stuff I don't use. And I started off small. I was going through wardrobes, throwing away clothes, anything I had it in my head, anything I haven't touched in 8 months, either bin it or bring it to charity shop. So I did that. And then it led me to more thinking and dumping and giving away and selling and etc. And getting rid of the debt that was associated with some of the stuff. And to cut a long story short, I went eventually from owning my own home, having a really nice car that I financed, and a house full of stuff, possessions, to now being able to fit everything I own, including me and my 2 dogs, in my 2-door car. I went over a period of maybe up to 2 years from having direct debits and standing orders every month, totaling in the region of £2,400, to where I am now, and my total direct debit and standing orders that come out of my bank are £98 per month. £98 per month. There's a few other things you pay, but that's just the stuff that comes out of my bank account. Now imagine if you suddenly went from having all those debts and all that to not having any of that. So potentially I'd go and live on somebody's sofa and not need any money to live. Although that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. So it puts you in a really, really nice position, a nice frame of mind. And it's a wonderful feeling. It's never left me. You just don't need most of the stuff you have, and I'm much, much happier without it. I'm free of clutter, I'm free of debt, and freer than I've ever been of responsibility, although you can never fully lose that. And then, once you realise that you're not going to get into debt again, you realise that you can live on much less than you ever thought you could, much less. And I feel much happier and much more content for doing it. So it very quickly became a game to me. I love the fact that I can now live this way. I feel more content, free, and I now know I'll never allow myself to revert back. I'm a different person. And then because I was thinking so much about this sort of stuff, I began to have realisations about other ways that I was just wasting money all my life. I don't regret how I've always been, but for me to fulfil my dream of living in somewhere nice in the sun and retiring early, well, if I had kept living, I couldn't do this. So it became very important to me, these realisations. So, and here's one example. So I was a driving instructor, and on my way to work every morning I would go to Spar and get a barista coffee. Then around lunchtime, Spar barista coffee. So 2 coffees a day, sometimes 3. Never thought anything about it. And of course when you're buying a barista coffee, you're buying a Kit Kat, and you're buying this and that and the other. Just the coffee alone. Now I can't remember exactly how much the coffee cost each. I think they were about £2. But just for the coffees alone, that's £1,248 a year. Just coffee out of Spar. By the way, I worked 6 days a week. That's based on 6 days a week. So I started to make, when I did eventually go back to work, I had to go back for a while. I didn't go back for very long, a few months, and then I left and did what I'm going to do. But after lockdown, I did go back to work for a short period of time. So I started to make myself a coffee and bring it with me, and I bought the barista plastic cup. And so I was having my coffee in the morning. I sacrificed the one at lunchtime, which I missed for about 2 days and forgot about. And that made me immediately become £100 a month better off. Just as coffee, £100 a month better off. So I then started to apply this sort of logic to all sorts of other stuff. Not stuff that I really like. You know, I don't deprive myself of anything. Just daft things, wasteful things. sweets being one of them. So I started to see that I got living much left, and I set about writing budgets, figuring out budgets, various different budgets, to see how much I felt I could live on without depriving myself. And even before I sold my apartment, I had started to test the budgets, and fairly consistently I was coming up with a figure of about £1,200. So I got to the point where I knew if I was able to do the things that I budgeted for and planned for, that I could live in Northern Ireland for about £1,200. Not that I wanted to live in Northern Ireland any longer, but that's what I was basing everything on, because that's where I was living, that's what I was spending on, £1,200. But I had calculated how much I would need to sustain me over a long period of time, and that would still be too much. I wouldn't be able to afford that over a sustained period. And what I mean by that is, I have eventually a pension going to come in, so at least I need whatever money I have to leave me to the pension, but I want to have more than that. I want to be comfortable in my retirement. So, and this is a biggie for me. This is a biggie. I had to face something that I was trying to avoid. I smoked cigarettes all my life. I'm not going to tell you what age I was when I started smoking, but I was very young, and I smoked all my life. I only ever managed to stop once for a year, and that was a year of torment. You know, I had this weird, bad attitude. My attitude wasn't single, I've no kids, I've no responsibility. If the cigarettes eventually do me my health harm, it's just me to answer for, and I like smoking, and I had all this nonsense in my head. The truth was, by the time this was happening, I was already starting to feel a wee bit chesty through smoking, you know, and I was paying for it. I was paying to do myself harm, and it's shocking how much you do pay for your cigarettes. I mean, 20 a day is a fairly average amount, I think, for smokers, a packet a day. And do you know how much that equated to over a year? £4,620. That's what I was spending over a year on cigarettes. And I knew it would be really difficult for me to start. Am I going to stop smoking? But the more and more I thought about it, the more I really seen that, gee, that's the final step. If I could stop smoking and save that money, all my plans can happen. But if I keep smoking, not going to happen. So I bought an e-cig, and I tried that, and it was hurting my throat and my chest. I didn't like it, and I thought these e-cigs were going to be easier than this. And then I tried different e-liquids, and then I bought a couple of books about how to stop smoking, and nothing worked. Nothing could get me to a point where I could see myself not smoking ever again. And then I came across an e-book that changed everything. Now, you wouldn't think that can happen. I'm one of those people, you know, sensible. I know what I want, and I know what I think, and all that sort of stuff, and nothing's going to change me. Well, this book, wonderful book by a wonderful author, wasn't like any of the other stop smoking books whatsoever. The book makes you look at smoking from a different perspective, and he tells you not to stop smoking until you finish the book. And by the time I got to the end of the book, I didn't want to smoke, and I stopped, and I knew I would never smoke again. I do still smoke e-cigs now. I got one that's had no nicotine, very, very low everything, and I hardly take it. I've been sitting here making this video on the roof, haven't even got it up with me, so I hardly do it, from 20 cigarettes a day. But I think I'm getting to the point now where I'm probably just going to stop taking that as well, because I don't take it very often. So all of a sudden, I didn't smoke. And I knew I have now fallen well within my budget that I could live on, that I knew I could afford. It brought me down to well under £1,000 a month in Northern Ireland that I could live on if I stuck to my budgets, my rules. And I also therefore knew that when I moved to somewhere, I would like it to have been Thailand, and my second place was Thailand or Spain, that I would be in a better position because the standard of living is less, especially in Thailand, but also in Spain. It doesn't cost as much to live. I don't know what it is now. Some stuff isn't very cheap, but I'm sure it must be 15-20% less than the UK. And that made me, once and for all, realise it was doable, and I was going to do it. There's been a lot of trial and errors over these past few years, and changes in the plan, and trying this and trying that and trying the other, but it's led me to here, sitting in this roof now, retired in Spain, feeling fantastic, feeling better than I've ever felt in my life. You don't always feel perfect, you know, don't get me wrong, you don't change your life and suddenly go from whatever you are to being a super happy person, but I'm very content. more content than I've ever been. So you can't say much more than that, you know. So that's how I came to making the final decision to do it, and it all happened from that point on. Now, the big thing, because of my particular individual situation, I knew that I could afford, for the period that the years that I would have needed to, I could just about afford about £1,000 a month. But I know that not everyone would be able to, or will be able to, finance that amount. But it's amazing how resourceful and imaginative human beings can be when they really set their minds to it, as I've proven. So I started to look at ways that I could bring in some income, because I knew what I could afford, and I knew if I could bring in any income at all additional to what I could afford, it was going to make me comfortable. And I'd made up my mind to search for a way to make some extra income on the internet, online, and that's what led me to starting my own channel on YouTube. Now, understand, YouTube is notoriously hard to make money. You know, only 8% of people who start YouTube channels ever get to the point where they can make money. You have to get to 1,000 subscribers before they start to pay anything, and that's super difficult. But I thought I would have a chance of doing it, decided YouTube channel, and I started to make wee daft videos in Northern Ireland while lockdown was still on, or during that period. And now I have nearly 2,500 viewers and 250,000 views. So I can't ask for more, but it's hard slog, and it's taken a long time to get to that. And I still earn relatively little for all the effort that goes into it. This is my actual earnings as of today for the last 28 days. Not every day, just total. Plus, YouTube allows you to earn a little bit in other ways. You may have noticed in the description below, there's a buy me a coffee link. Some of my subscribers would buy a coffee or two, and that helps if they want to help the channel. Just below the videos there's a link that says thanks, and if you click that, YouTube lets you give any channel that you're watching whatever you want to give. So those things, there's a certain amount you get every month, and on a fairly regular basis you get money from that as well. But still in total under £100 a month. But although that's not a lot of money, if you think about it, it still pays around 10% of my total budget per month, even at that. And it's always going up if I make more videos and more videos. So it's never going to get super high. You know, my channel isn't the sort of channel that's going to have 100,000 subscribers, but it's always going up a bit and up and a bit. And every bit that it goes up makes my life that bit easier. But of course, whether someone who wants to do this decides to try a YouTube channel or whatever, there's loads of other ways to make money. And if you're living on a budget, then you don't have to murder yourself. For example, lots of people work in supermarkets here. Lots of expats and bars and restaurants. There's lots of other ways to make money online if you get into it, if you delve into it. You know? So it just takes effort, thought and imagination, and I believe anyone can do this. Now, I'm not going to go into delve into the exact amounts and details of how I finance myself, how I cover that 1,000, but I am going to give you an insight into my particular circumstances. Okay? So first of all, and most importantly, is what I've already covered. Get your monthly expenditure down to as little as you can possibly get it down to. Clear all your debts. You could never start this and still have debts. Whether you have a house to sell or whatever, you need to focus on getting rid of debts before you do anything else. Next, I sold my apartment. And when I sold it, and this was painful, I used part of what I made on it to clear every single debt I had in the world. Everything, bar nothing. No debts. Got rid of them all. And what was left, I put into a high interest savings account. Throughout lockdown, I saved every penny I could, and what I accumulated went into the same high interest bank account. I sold everything I could, and those proceeds went into the bank account. Also, although I've never been good with money, when I was younger, in my 20s, I went out with a girl who sold pensions and insurance, and she talked me into taking out a pension, which I didn't really want to do at the time. Didn't know, but it wasn't my nature. But that turned out to be a good thing, because it's built up over the years to a nice amount. And also, one of the companies that I worked for a few years give me a company pension, and I have been able now, once you get to 55, you can cash those in, and whether you agree with cashing in or not, I cashed those in and they went into the high interest savings account, and that's it. You know, so I found ways. I never seen myself as being somebody that had money. I've seen myself as somebody that earned good money and spent good money, but I never seen myself as somebody that had money. Well, as it turns out, whenever you really put my mind to it and thought about everything, I was in a better position than I thought. And getting rid of debt, getting rid of all your debts, not having any debts, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. And I don't miss anything. I don't regret anything that I've done. Nothing. And this all leads me to my final. And by the way, I'm moving back gradually here because the sun keeps putting me in the shade. Yes, this leads me to my final, very important thought. A big realization, an important thing that came to me. Once you ensure that you can make the changes that allow you to improve your life for the better, to do what you want, and that being everything from getting yourself out of debt to being able to enjoy more holidays, to being happier and freer, there's one final requirement, and it's a biggie. You need to be brave. You need to not fear change. In my opinion, fear is the biggest hurdle to people changing their lives for the better, doing what they want. But you really are, in your current form, only going to live this life once. And being happy and content is the most important thing in all our lives. And I can assure you, I believe money doesn't bring happiness. Peace of mind does. That's very deep. So you have to figure out if you can do it. And I think everybody can, to whatever level. Should it just be to give yourself an extra holiday a year and get rid of all the crap, all the debt? Do what I'm doing. I believe everybody can do it. It's just a mindset. I decided to just go for it, and I have never regretted it, and I never will. I'm not that sort of person anyway. You do what you do. So there you go. I kept saying I was going to make a video of how I can afford to live this life, and I really hope you enjoyed it. And I hope for any of you looking for a new life or to improve your current life, I hope it was helpful to you. No point in dreaming all your life if you don't try and fulfill that dream. Alright, so I'm going to leave it off there. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe, it'd be great. I'd love to hear your comments. But until next time, bye for now.